This is Glambition Radio, episode number 289. We are flipping the script with Lisa Larter on her podcast, She Talks Business.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and founder of The Trust, the modern premier network for 7- and 8-figure women leaders. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are creating the new models for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And hey, we're doing it with style. So let's go. Happy summer. For the entire month of June, it is Flip the Script Summer here on Glambition Radio. So what does that mean? Well, you're used to hearing me in the seat of the host, but for the next several shows, you get to hear me being interviewed. You know, I've been on some super podcasts over the last year or two, and I know you may not have heard these. They didn't just feature light business chat. These interviews led me into some deep conversations. And that's sometimes where my best stuff comes out, the stories, the confessions, the revelations. And I want to share these with you. So our first drop today is my recent interview on Lisa Larter's podcast, She Talks Business. And we agree on so many things, including the insanity taught within many of the online marketing spaces, just brainwashing. And not only is she a solid coach and a 7-figure business leader, but she is a past client and a founding member of The Trust. During our conversation, we dive into the why and how of the sharp right turn I made back in my business in, say, the early to mid 2010s. That's when I decided to disassemble my complex business and these large-scale programs and create some space and instead rebuild something I was feeling deeply called to. You're also going to hear behind-the-scenes details of my experience on Secret Millionaire. That was the ABC primetime reality show that I was on back in 2011, and the profound impact it had really on the direction of my business, my identity, just everything. Go learn more about Lisa now at lisalarter.com. Be sure to subscribe to her podcast, She Talks Business. It's a great, no-nonsense business and marketing talk show. Really, there's so few shows where you really get no BS, and that is Lisa. We will put links for you in the show notes. And a reminder, I have 2 special invitations for you. First, later this summer, I'm hosting a special online series called the Innovate Sessions. It's an exclusive private series of panel discussions specifically by and for women who have built high 7- and 8-figure companies. This isn't just a webinar. You will be participating in the conversation with us, and it's sponsored by my network, The Trust. If you run a business generating over $1 million in revenue and you'd like information when we have full details, just send an email to info@jointhetrust.org or DM The Trust. The Trust is on Instagram and on LinkedIn. Our IG profile is Join the Trust. Let us know that you would like to participate in our upcoming Innovate sessions. And second, get ready because I'm hosting my annual live event again this fall. Iconic is back. It's needed, and we are going to have a brand new spin for 2022. It's happening November 2nd and 3rd here in Phoenix. And guess what? We've already got a page where you can go get basic info and get on our priority notification list. That way, you'll be the first to know when all details are available and seats are open. It's a 2-day business and personal power-up for the female entrepreneur leader who knows that her next chapter can be nothing less than iconic. Iconicwithallybrown.com. That's iconicwithallybrown.com. Now, get ready for a fantastic interview by the amazing Lisa Larter on her show, She Talks Business.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to She Talks Business. I am here today with my colleague and mentor, Allie Brown, and I am super excited to have her on the show. It's, a little bit surreal for me in some ways how back in 2008, I took one of Allie's online. She was actually the very first program. Her program was the very first program I ever bought online. I researched every testimonial on her website, and then I binge watched every single DVD because you got them in the mail back then. And that was actually the inspiration for my first business. And so fast forward to have done strategy work with you, to have attended events with Alan Weiss with you, to be a member of the trust, and to have gotten to know you is a real privilege, Ali. So thank you for saying yes to being here.
Oh, it's so fun to be here. And I always enjoy our conversations. And in fact, like you kind of summed up something in our introduction that I hadn't had the wording for. So thank you already for something you don't even realize you did. I'll tell you later.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, it is, it's great to have you here. And I was telling you pre-recording that, this season of She Talks Business really came about because of the trust. When we were in Miami and we were out for lunch, the group of women at the trust saw one of the signs that you have for, the premier network for 7 and 8 figure women in business. And this young woman came over to where we were sitting outside having lunch because she wanted to see who were the women that were doing this. And it was a real aha for me because I'm someone who has never really done all of that income marketing stuff. I've never kind of flown the flag to say, oh, I've generated 7 whatever figures in my business, or I have, 7 figures in the bank account. I just haven't done that stuff. And that moment really made me realize that we need to talk about this stuff more because it inspires other women, especially young women, to what's possible. So shout out to the trust. I love being a member.
Yeah. Thank you. And we love having you. Yeah. It's a fine line, isn't it? I mean, there's nothing wrong with quietly making a lot of money, but for women, it is so powerful when we share that because for so long you think it's impossible. And then when you do it though, you realize it may not have been as hard as you thought. Some of you listening right now, it may not be as hard as you're thinking it is.
No, there's definitely a lot of, I think, mindset work that I hate the word mindset work. I think you have to have the right mindset in order to charge and get your business to that level. And once you realize that the only thing getting in the way of you getting there is you, all of a sudden you see what is possible. So speaking of, things that can get in the way being you, I'd really love to start by having you share a little bit with us the decision that you made to take a sharp right turn in your business a few years back, because I have followed your work online for a number of years. You had built almost an 8-figure business yourself. And then all of a sudden, Allie Brown kind of disappeared. She, started to just, do things differently. You were really, really quiet. You kind of spoke out about some of the stuff that was going on in the online space. And I look at that single act as one of the most courageous things I've ever seen women do or a woman do online, because not only did you walk away from a very healthy business, your identity was tied up in that business and how people perceived you was tied up in that. So how did you find the courage to do that?
It's so layered. That's the thing you shared in the pre-talk, by the way, that I wrote down how you described it, because when I explain that shift to people, they say, was it hard? And I'm like, some of the decisions were not hard. The hardest part was my identity was so linked with that business and being Allie Brown. Right. And here you are, right, surrounded by all these blessings and everything's wonderful. Like, who are you to dare to want to change that? With all those blessings that I felt like I had been given and the opportunities. And here I am changing lives and people are getting results. How selfish of me to start to want something different. It was absolutely agonizing internally. And then externally, like you said, when you've been doing the same thing for a long time, even when some people expect you to make a change, like there's a lot of people who won't, though, we were getting people upset that I was starting to talk about leadership and not marketing. And I'm like, guys, I've been selling stuff online since 2002. Like, and during this time, which took several years to make the shift, I'd gone through a lot of changes myself, and kind of the short version, just a few highlights. One, I was on the show Secret Millionaire, which you can still watch it. I think it's on Amazon, it's on Hulu. And the gist of that show was that someone is taken out of their current, uber successful life, being Miss All That. You're put into some hard situations, living on welfare, working with some people in emotional situations. Like you're just kind of, you're back to that raw part of humanity that you may have been shut off with all the stuff going on around you. And you'll see me transform on that show. It just cracked me open. And I knew it was a problem during the show. Well, I realized this later. People say, was that show hard? Where you're living on welfare and doing all this stuff. I said, some parts of it were hard, of course, but I said it was a wake-up call where it was about midway through the week and I didn't want to come back. I was happier living on welfare and working with the homeless than the life I had been in. And like the wake-up call was that like my life every 5 minutes was scheduled. We had launches upon launches. We had endless team calls. We had to top every launch we did with the next launch. We were in this mode of being that was kind of exciting, but at the same time, I'm like, all right, well, how much longer do we do this? Like, do we just keep trying to do double and better? And what if I want something different? And so that show kind of just shook me up. Like if you think of the GPS on your phone. So it could be a whole conversation itself, but I like giving people a little glimpse into what happened to me during that week. It really was about the space and no tech, nothing. I had nothing to remind me who I was or the identity that I was locked into. And they
didn't know who you were.
They didn't know who I was. No one knew. It was so nice to be anonymous. It was nice to just have conversations with people just about life and who they were. And, that, and again, I'm grossly simplifying, the process that happened during that week on that show, but I came back then thinking totally differently. I knew I'm like, all right, I may not know what I want, but I could start disassembling some things. And so I have clients do this, by the way, as well. The first thing we do when they come in a door for VIP days, we're putting everything they're doing up on the wall. And for many women, especially if they've gotten into that online type of model and they're doing information or they're expert on something or they're teaching or coaching, there's a lot of stuff. And we get it all up on the wall. More,
right?
Oh my gosh, just everything. They're like, and people wanted this thing so that I'm doing this course. And then they wanted a mastermind for their dog. And you just start adding on stuff because in the beginning, it is fun. You're saying yes to everything. You're helping people. It's fantastic. And then I just kind of watch their faces. They're mapping it out. I'm like, what about that one? They're like, oh, these people drive me nuts. Or, we really make no money with this, but they like this. And so we just start crossing stuff out. We're not going to know how yet. Let's just cross it out. And this is what I did. Started looking at, what is the 80-20 rule applied to my business? If I looked at what's that 20%, the Pareto's principle, the 20% of my business that's likely bringing me 80% of my happiness, 80% of the income, the real net income, the word called net, ladies. Okay. Which means after the launch, clean up. After you're paying affiliates, after you've had the event with all the balloons and the guest speaker and all that, really, you get down to it, like, where's that net? And
Shine events weren't cheap.
Oh, those were, they were not, they were fun. They caused a stir. They got people excited, but I knew that wasn't the long game, right? I couldn't have acrobats, and I do not have acrobats at my events now. And, the big disassembling of it, which was very, very hard. And I want to be clear, this took kind of several years for me to start determining what I wanted. So internally was that internal struggle, like, is it okay if I change? Like, how will I be viewed? Will people understand? And finally, I've just said, I have to be okay with some people never understanding. And there are still some people in my life that were in my life that we don't speak anymore because of the changes I made. My change in plans was not the plan that they had in mind, or part of being the company that I had founded. And, but most people, I was able to really help them through this process find what they should be doing. And so I had to deal with my internal stuff. And then externally, I think I waited too long, Lisa, because I really felt at that point, we weren't looking ahead at enough what was coming up the pike. There was social media, was everywhere. Suddenly there were people teaching the same things that I was teaching, but they were doing cooler videos and they danced and, like fun, they made it really fun. Suddenly things got really slick. And I kind of saw where everything's going. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to play this game. I don't know if I want to be like, we're teaching great stuff. I mean, I was an Inc. 500 company. Like I'd proven my worth. I'd proven what I was doing, but we could never be as cool as the other people coming up. And so there was just so many things. I'm like, I wonder if now is the time to get out. I wonder if right now is the time to make the exit.
What were you most afraid of when you were considering all of that?
It's interesting. The most afraid.
Because what goes through my mind, if I think about disassembling my business, I can immediately think, what would I tell clients? What would I tell my team? What would I do if our revenues dropped? Like I can feel the different layers of fear. So I'm curious as to what were some of the things that scared you or brought fear up?
Like I had to kind of go there because I have to really go back to that point. Because at this point, I'm like, I feel like, gosh, I couldn't not have done it. Like I was so ready and so burnt out and so creatively starved and to do something new that I feel I didn't question the decision, but I definitely put it off. And I think it was feeling like I was abandoning the people who kind of helped made me, the kind of like, we made you. I don't know if what I expected to someone stand up and go, we made you who you are. We made you Allie Brown because we followed you for years and you're going to change what you do. Now you're going to go only work with 7 and 8 figure women entrepreneurs. Who are you? Oh, she's elitist.
Who do you think you are?
That was going through my mind, luckily not to the point that I said, oh, I want to stay working with these people. Like, you know what I mean? Some wonderful people, but by then there's so many hundreds of other coaches that could help them. Right. I had a special lane. I had a special gift. And I knew like, where do I spend time that I love these clients? Like, where do I spend time that I love the conversations? Who are the clients that can't find this anywhere else? And I know that this is special to them. And that was where I decided to go to that portion. So I'm going to give you some warning signs to look for though, that I experienced and other clients have shared the same thing. Like when you start feeling the slightest bit resentful for something you've created, or you see the calls coming up on the calendar or your list of content, people are in content purgatory, they sell this big program and then they get into it. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in this thing. Just be honest with yourself. Just make some notes because you're going to come back to it later when you redesign things next time. Have courage to design things around who you are and not what you see works or what a coach says, well, this is what's working now. So this is what you should do, right? You should be dancing in reels. I am not dancing in reels. You should be doing things this way. You should have a 14-step funnel. Just any time that I've tried to do something by the book like that, exactly, it typically doesn't work for me anyway. And so I realized like, why am I not just designing this in a way that aligns with my energy and who I am? So I encourage clients, start there first. Then we'll find models to plug into, right? Do that later, but start with who you are. Like I had one client come in, and this was years ago, but she just burst into tears. She's like, I hate webinars. I hate them. And I'm like, you can decide not to do webinars. It's okay. She's like, but everyone's saying this is what works. I'm like, oh my gosh, these poor people, we're just following along. We start our own business to break all the rules. And then we get locked right back into a set of rules.
Yeah. And it's so hard to, you start to feel like, in the corporate world, they would call them golden handcuffs, right? You get stock options and you stay because those stock options are going to mature someday. And I think that in our businesses, we have our own set of golden handcuffs. It's the responsibility, it's the commitments that we make. It's I can't not do this now because this is the way everybody does it, or this is what people expect. And we literally go from being entrepreneurs that are creative to an employee of our own company that behaves, we don't have choice. And so I wanted to ask you about that because I think that a lot of people don't know how to make that pivot or make that sharp right turn. And there's not only the financial aspect that people need to consider. And we talked about net, right? If you have a skinny net and you want to make a sharp right turn in your business, it can be a risky thing to do if your livelihood and your mortgage payment and feeding your kids is dependent on the net, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important for people to hear stories about people who have had the courage to do that.
Oh, it's so important. But you know what made it easier? When you do realize the net you're actually making from some of these business models.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a shocking, when I've had clients do this over the years. If I hear the least bit of complaint about, like, they're having the big event, they're saying, oh, this is just such a pain in the ass, and we have to pay the coaches and pay this. And then we have entertainment. And I said, you know what? I want to see what all this, I want you to do a whole analysis of this program, not everything else, but this program in particular, and what the net is. I mean, after everything, right? Paying for the Zoom. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll come back in and they just look like a ghost, and they'll say, my God, I could probably do, have a handful of clients right now, just working with at a high end, and net more than this.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why I hate the whole 7-figure marketing BS, because I've worked with people who have 7-figure businesses that can't afford to pay themselves.
Yeah.
The net on that is net nothing.
Right.
And so I agree with you, when you start to strip it apart, I think it's a really good point. If, all of a sudden your net take home, what you pay yourself and your profits is really a small fraction of the work of the revenue that you're bringing in, maybe it is time to reevaluate how you do things.
And here's the thing too, I want to sink this in, Lisa, too, is like, ladies, let's also remember, there's no one right way to do this. Some women love running these big companies. It's like a machine, like you could tell they are born to be CEO. They are running this thing. It's awesome. Some prefer to work deeper, like with clients one-on-one, which I do now, because I feel like at the 7-figure, 8-figure levels, that's what's so needed. And then on the side, we have the network, right? Which is what we did with the trust. But this is just going to line up with who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want everyone to really, to honor that, and then the $1 million mark can be a bit of a false god in some ways. It's also a huge milestone though, for so many women. So I still tell them, you want to hit it, go for it, get it. You'll know you did it. Right. But do it in a way that's aligned with who you are. That's the bigger message.
Yeah, absolutely. Money isn't going to always bring you happiness. I mean, it helps when you want to buy new shoes and go to the spa and things like that. But if you're working like a dog to generate more sales and you're not happy doing what you're doing, it's time to reevaluate.
Yeah.
So, you started the trust. And I remember you texting me and saying, hey, I have something that I want to do. I really love to talk to you about it. And that was fall of 2019. And I think our very first trust meeting in person in Miami in 2020 was literally 24 hours before COVID restrictions blanketed out the world.
I remember sitting at lunch with Ellen Latham. We're like, what do you think of this COVID thing? We're like, it's probably going to disappear by next week. Right. And then little did we know.
All of a sudden we were in lockdowns, and, here you've made this sharp right turn, and you've got this new thing that you've really been nurturing and you're ready to start. And then COVID hit. How did you weather that storm and not lose steam? Because obviously the trust was, intended to be an in-person networking organization for 7 and 8-figure women. And people were just not getting on planes and flying places and doing this. And, what I have seen, I'm sure you've seen this in your career too, is that a lot of people, the first sign that something goes wrong is like somebody popped the balloon of their idea, took all the air out, and they can't pick themselves up off the ground and keep going. And so how did you deal with that challenge when it came forward?
I remember just going through periods of I was first of all, just really irritated at this whole COVID thing and derailed my plan, right? I had a plan for the plan. I finally had a plan, right? After a few years of not having a plan. And then the COVID hits, and I realized very quickly. So my original idea for the trust that was actually, it would be only in person and feel like so exclusive and private, like we wouldn't even be really connected online. That was kind of the vision, because I was thinking, what would be the antithesis of all this junk online? Maybe even a secret location. We were playing with all these ideas, just brainstorming, like you don't know where you're going till you get your ticket, or, we were just having fun. And, but we said, definitely in-person meetings. People just were craving that already, even before the last 2 years, right? People were craving like real connection, closed doors without recording and knowing that you're going to be on screen, or, just having these real conversations. And so, I won't, I tell people very honestly, some people, I go, 2020 was my best year ever and I turned it around. That's great. 2020 was very challenging for me personally. I felt like, okay, I knew intuitively this was the time, but why was this happening? And why was this timing at this right time? And so I pulled back maybe a little more than I could have or should have, but just, I think mentally and emotionally, also dealing with some things going on here at the home, the kids. I also take care of my mom who lives with us. I gave myself permission, Lisa, though, to like say, you know what? This may not be the gangbusters launch plan I had in mind, but let me step back and let me think about things. And giving myself permission to do that, when in the past I would have said, like, how's this going to look if I like take a breath, right? And how, if I take time to think about this and we change some things, is that okay? And it was so great. I was in such a different mindset then. I'm so glad I didn't try to do this a few years ago. I would have done this so differently and so not aligned, I think, with what the trust really stands for. It's this such high integrity that it's not about the speed of things. It's not about how fast we accelerate. It's about doing this for the long game. Like this is my legacy play. And I want women in here who ideally will be with us for a lifetime. Like we're all going to get old together, Lisa. We'll be doing the Golden Girls meeting, right? Like in Florida one day, we'll all be like, in our 80s and muumuus or something. And some basic things I had to change with the model. So obviously, we started connecting on Zoom to help each other, because immediately too, some of our members, especially those with physical locations, had to figure out some things that we always figured out online, but we could help them. Right. And they had ideas for us. People were sharing about PPP loans and grants and all kinds of great stuff. And the information shared was so valuable. We kept doing it. And then finally we got back into that model. The challenge for me, I think, is always that temptation to like, oh, should I be doing something else? Like if the trust isn't going to be growing this first year the way I thought it would, should I launch a course? Should I do another program? Right. And I don't know, it's probably the first time in my whole career that, we had revenue goals, but I'm like, you know what? That isn't the most important thing right now. I am staying so focused on this, and we're going to build this slowly and carefully and with these incredible women. And that's how this is going to roll. And
so can you talk a little bit about, we had revenue goals, but that wasn't going to be the main focus. How do you do that?
For me, that was, I'm in this new zone where I just so know that it's all going to work out. And this is juxtaposed to the old Allie has the metrics, right? Saying like, this is my goal, and shifting to being pulled by a vision and trusting that process, and knowing that, I'll attract the clients. It's kind of the way I used to be before we got so machinated. What's the word for like machine? Is it that the word? Yeah. Like before we became so calculated.
Mechanical. Yeah.
Mechanical. Thank you. And it's a shift that's hard to describe, but some of you who are just so tapped into flow and intuition, you probably know where this place is, where you hold the vision, that you're going to be brought the right members at the right time, the right person will tell each other. And of course, you're always still talking about things in marketing. I don't go sit in a cave, but let myself go into this flow. And let's understand too that I've already built these companies. I'm obviously not living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm okay. I could take a breath and give myself permission to do that, which I think some of us don't sometimes. We're so worried that we're going to lose our place in line, or that I don't know, women also, especially, we have these mindsets around money that, we feel like we should be always earning, and getting out of that earning mindset and shifting into this whole different place. So we have goals, but the vision really is what pulls. And I just gave myself permission during that time to really think about the long term of what we were creating, and knowing that like this year may not meet the goals that I had in mind, but we were absolutely being pulled toward the vision. Like some miracles happened that year, just with like magical people coming in, or people talking about the group and we weren't expecting it, and people, inquiring, and just these little things to let me know, okay, I'm on the right track. This is where we're supposed to be.
So what advice would you give our listeners who maybe don't have the business experience that you have, the confidence that you have, and or the financial cushion, in terms of how they should, handle something when they have a big vision, but all of a sudden they feel like they're not making the progress that they need to make on their goals? How do they stop themselves from getting completely derailed?
Yeah. First thing, well, we got to pay the bills, right? So we got to deal with that. So go through your numbers. And I half of this is logical, linear, Lisa Larder left brain, right? Like, okay. And the other half is, the intuition and trusting and energy and attraction, right? It's very balanced, and you got to have both. If you're living in just attraction land, you're not going to pay your bills, right? So let's get this clear. So part of it is look at not, I can't do this, but how could I do this? Which programs could you turn up the dial on, or which clients could you turn up the dial on, or create something new that is high net and low stress that would help support you during that transition to the new thing. So if I have clients who I know, and this often happens, they'll come in the door and they have this business, and then after lunch, usually they start loosening up and they'll say, there's this other thing that I really want to do. There's actually this mission, or gosh, I really wish I could do this part of the business full time. And I said, well, let's play with that. You want to play with that? They're like, yeah, let's do that. And so we start literally just sitting and figuring out, how could that happen? And it sounds so simple, Lisa, but people don't often give themselves permission to see this and say, well, if we got rid of these programs and maybe trimmed the team over here. See, it usually involves decisions we don't want to make that are hard, maybe making some changes. And that's where everyone stops. But I encourage everyone, give yourself permission to just play with that. Put it on paper, put it on the wall, sit with it with a glass of wine, just start playing. If I wanted to go this direction, how could I? And you don't have to do it like I did, just saying, you know what, by the way, the third change that happened that time was me having twins. I didn't even mention that, which kind of throws you for a loop, and you get ruthless about your time and things get a lot clearer. So, but you don't have to do it that way and say, you know what, here's my end date. I'm stopping this. I'm starting this. This could be gradual shift, but do something in that direction, because momentum breeds momentum. Something will happen. I promise. If you make a move in that direction you want to go to. It may lead you, though, to a decision that you have to make. So that's the warning.
Yeah,
it may come faster than you think.
So you and I were talking a little bit about how do you become a category of one. We were referencing, Alan Weiss, and how people don't Google, there is content. They Google his name.
Coach. Yeah.
They're not looking for the consultant to consultants. They're looking for Alan Weiss. And I think that you too have built a category of one. People are looking for Ali Brown. They know you. So if somebody is listening to the show right now, knowing what we know about online marketing and how it's changed over the last decade, and even social media and all of this whole, capitalist voyeur economy online, like, what advice would you give people for establishing their own category of one and preserving their attention?
Preserving their attention, their own attention, or the clients?
No, their own attention, because I feel like so many people go down the rabbit hole of vanity metrics on social media. They misinterpret the number of followers and likes and hearts and taps and all of that stuff as being evidence that they're doing good. And then they get, their attention gets fragmented away from what's most important to what's happening online. And they think they're building, a brand for themselves. They think they're building a category of one, but they're really lost. Yeah. So what advice would you give people knowing what you know now? What would you tell people to do if they want to be in that category of one?
Yeah. I want to walk through a few steps I shared at Iconic for those of you who were there, which is my event. But if you'll remember, there's a session there on who are your false gods, right? And for so many of us, social media is a false god. Likes and, like you said, hearts. I love that. I have 3,000 hearts. How many do you have? And I'm like, what is happening? This is a clown town. We don't even realize it, right? When we get sucked into this stuff. So number one, what metrics are you measuring your success by? And you may be surprised when you really admit what you're writing down and what those metrics are. And then think about what your metrics should be. For most women, not all, but most, it's impact they're having. It's freedom and flexibility in their business. It's doing the work that they love the most and not the work that they don't enjoy. Look at that. And then maintaining your attention, that's brilliant. It's so true because people say they want this, but then they'll go back and they're like, but I want likes on my social. And it's not going to be dropped. I'm telling you, this is not going to be easy. And over the years, I've seen this, I got sucked into it at some point. This is a giant psyop, on the things we're placing value on and getting back into what you value in your work and what is your great work in the world. And being that category of one will happen very naturally when you link into what are you really here to do? What are you really here to say, right? Truly being a thought leader. Okay. People call themselves a thought leader, but maybe they're more of an influencer. I'd really distinguish those. Are you saying things that no one else is saying and leading people to a new place? And
you're parroting.
Yeah. And then for some people, it's getting very clear on their niche market. So I made a very strategic decision to work with women only above the $1 million mark. For me, it was about the different conversations. It's different. It's different problems, right? Different problems at that level, different conversations, different opportunities. We can go a little deeper. And for some of you, it may be a niche market, but you haven't given yourself permission because you maybe think, oh, that won't look as big online. Right. Mass markets typically are a race to the bottom. Typically, there are people who have hit it out of the park generally, and if they're marketing to beginners, but you're typically going to get sucked into a battle for vanity, a battle for lowest prices. It's just a race down a hill. And for most people, you're not going to want to be there. So look for where you can be specialized. Look for where you can be in that category of one, where you feel unstoppable, untouchable, these are the people I love helping, or this is the product that no one can touch. And this is where we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I had a little bit of a taste of that yesterday because I did a full day strategy session with a husband and wife couple that own businesses together. And I've done a few of these now where I've had women clients who all of a sudden want to bring their husbands in to do the work together. And I always feel a little ambivalent at first because I think, oh, well, what's this guy going to think? Is he going to be on board? Is he going to be resistant? Is he going to be willing to play? Right. And we were sitting at dinner last night and this woman's husband said to me, you truly are exceptional at what you do. And it was just the greatest compliment to hear that, because in my head, I've been kind of noodling on this idea of creating a specialized way to work with couples that are building businesses together too. And so it's interesting that you say that, because the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, there's not enough of those people, right?
Yes.
And so it's, I think it's just really interesting to pay attention to your own dismissal of what the opportunities might be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. We talk ourselves out of it before we even think through it. It's interesting. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the trust. I found it fascinating when Dana Jacoby was talking to us, and she said that pre-COVID, 4% of businesses owned by women were seven figures and above. Post-COVID, it's only 2% of women owned businesses are seven figures and above. And so here you are during COVID trying to build this premier networking organization for women that are seven figures and above. And you're dealing with a very, 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 very small pool of people. Can you talk to us a little bit about why you felt the market needed something special for those women and what your vision was? And, I'm going to guess you've had to say no to some people that are really close, and how, hard that's been.
Yeah, that's been hard, especially when they're friends too. And they're like, but I'm like, but I know you're not at 1 million yet. You can't.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you manage that when you draw the line in the sand and not, make exceptions for some of those people?
Yeah.
I'd love to just hear kind of your ideas about why this was needed. And because it is a small gene pool.
You're making this sound like more of a challenge by the end of this interview. It's Lisa. Lisa's going to lay out all the reasons this shouldn't have worked in the first place. Thanks.
No, but I'm kidding.
Totally. No, you brought up that good point too. And the market's essentially halved, right? But here's where I got the idea, and here's where I stay true, right? And here's where the metrics don't even matter to me. This all started with the circle of my colleagues and my clients. And I could see, because I was included in this, when I hit that $1 million mark, the first thing I did, I hit the $1 million mark in 2006. And I was like, great, where do I go now? I love these people, but I can't have these conversations anymore. And like, I'm excited. I want to get in the big girl rooms, right? I wanted to go to these places. I'd be surrounded by other people like this. And I either found like kind of the bro down networking groups, some great advice, nice, but like conversations with women for me are always a little deeper and more interesting. And that's what I wanted. And then I found there are a few networks around there, and I'm not talking about coaching masterminds or any of that jazz. I'm talking about truly networks that are not there to learn a model together or be coached, but to connect. Mm-hmm. And I found some, there's some organizations out there, and, they provide some good services and met some good people, but it just didn't kind of have the flavor of this whole new breed of entrepreneurs like us. Like we're just a different animal than someone building a corporate style company. Even if they are an entrepreneur, it's just a kind of a different thing. And so my clients, even when they hit 7 figures, 8 figures, they're like, where should I go? And I gave them a name of a few of these organizations, and they came back and they're like, no, they're like, could you start something? And I'm thinking, oh gosh, I don't know. And no. And then I kept thinking about it. And then they would say again, like, oh, I'd love to get together with even a lot of your past clients, like just for a day, could you put something together? And I'm thinking, maybe there's something in this. Because in our industry, when I say industry, I mean, this whole, especially the world I came from, the online coaching consulting world, typically you have these high-end masterminds that people stay in for a few years and then they'll move on. They join someone else's because maybe the purpose has been fulfilled, or they're so damn expensive, to be honest. Some of these, it's not sustainable. I wanted to design something that was an accessible membership fee, but still like a good buy-in. So, you're getting people in there to add value. They're not there just to sell people, and really design this for a lifetime. And that's where the trust came from. And that is where the idea came from. And so, I know the stats out there, if you looked at this from a numbers point of view, or if I had an accountant looking, what's the viability of this business idea, they'd think I was nuts. But it's really about the heart of it and who we're going to attract. And these women who then invite in other women to be a part of this. And you've been to the meetings, it really has this family feel. Like we weren't even supposed to have a May meeting. And now suddenly we're having annual May meetings, like added in because no one wanted to wait between, the spring and the fall. Because everyone loves being with each other. They love seeing each other. There are lifelong friendships being formed in this group. There are business ideas that, one business owner at one of our meetings got an idea that saved them instantly 6 figures on a tax bill with some new information from someone else. A few of them have started businesses together. There's a sisterhood there that I haven't seen elsewhere. And the best compliment I got from a new member who has been part of many things said, I have never seen a room like that of women at this level who are just so generous, no posturing in there. No one's coming in like I miss all that. Right. I'm sure there will be as we grow, but I can't, I can't promise there's going to be one in every room. Right. Like we're almost over 50 members now. So like, but they come with a spirit of generosity and just, being happy to open the vest and talk about their business and what they do. And it's just nothing like they've experienced before. And that's the most rewarding thing. And as this grows, like, that's what I want to see grow, and these women helping each other. Cause it's about the business, but it's also not, right? Like, we talk a lot about business, but there's so much heart to this, and helping each other as humans, like going through this journey together.
Yeah. I think it's so important for, our listeners to recognize that it doesn't matter what stage you're at in your business. It is important to surround yourself with like-minded people. If you are constantly behind a computer screen trying to figure things out by yourself, it's going to take you a lot longer, and it's going to feel a lot lonelier to do. One of the things that I really like about the trust is your retention rate is ridiculously high. So, I have renewed 3 times now, and every year I come back and I see so many of the same people. And because I've been in this for 3 years now, I'm really starting to build stronger relationships with people. And I love that, because it really does feel like a trusted network of people that, you can count on. And I think everyone needs that, regardless of where they're at in their business.
And the name of the trust, I got the idea. It was after my very first Iconic was a small one. Did you come to that one in LA? The very first one I did, it was a little smaller. It was at the Ritz in Marina Del Rey.
Oh, wait. Yes, I think I did.
Maybe you did. Yeah. And the day after, I was just kind of, ramping down and walking around Malibu a bit. And I walked by a sign. It was for a financial company, but it was in gold. It was like this beautiful gold sign. And it said another name with it, but it said The Trust. And I'm like, something just like went, bzzz. I just got this little buzz, and I took a picture of it, and it kind of sat with me and sat with me and sat with me. And I'm like, that word means so many things to us. It's trusting ourselves as women, especially. There's so many layers to trust. We have to trust ourselves. We have to learn to trust other women again, right? In business, and having this incredible group of women that we realize that we can trust each other. And then it is kind of a brain trust, right? Like we're in that room sharing things with each other that we don't share elsewhere. We're not, we may have these resources, be happy to share them, but like, this is the forum to do that. Like, we're sharing really, really great stuff.
Oh, the last meeting when we were talking about, what to do with your money, like that was priceless.
That was wild. There's stuff like, all you ladies listening, and guys too, like, there's stuff you don't even know you could be doing with your money. Like it's, and all legal, I think, but totally. But
totally.
Great, interesting investment strategies. Yeah, like some of our members are getting into crypto. We're going to be learning about that. Like, just really, really cool stuff. And women doing these things, and this is just their life, doing amazing things with their families that no one else does. Many of us are homeschooling or alternative schooling our kids now. We're a new breed. Like, we are creating the new systems. We are creating the new models. And when you want to give yourself permission, going back to your original topic, to like, when you have that urge to break out of what you've been doing and do something different, it's for a reason. It's because you are here to help create something new. So don't forget that. So important. Yeah. And join the trust.org if you'd like to learn more about joining us for our next event.
Yeah. What comes to mind when I think about all of these women gathering together is you don't know what you don't know until you know. And if you want to know, being around women like this is where you go to know, because you're going to quickly learn things that you didn't know that you need to know on that journey, which speaks to why being in the right room with the right people really matters.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you one more question as we wrap up. And it's something that I've asked everyone on this season of the podcast. And that is, what is your entrepreneurial superpower?
Knowing.
And so how did you cultivate that sense of knowing and learn to trust it?
Are you allowed to ask a follow-up question? I thought it was just supposed to be one profound word and then we'd close.
Oh,
okay.
no, because that was such a good answer. I need to know more.
Yeah, I just felt like that was complete,
like,
Lisa. I don't know. Now I got to backtrack. What does that mean? I don't know. It kind of just came to me. Let me think. So what is that? Part of it's age, I'm 50, some stuff, right? Like as we get older and when you've been doing this so long and ladies and guys, you know so much. We know so much that we don't give ourselves permission to know and make decisions from that place of knowing and trusting. And if I have, I did this in a workshop once and I was trying to get that group to really feel confident and have the courage to make some changes in their lives. And I had them go through their life. I said, you know what, just write down like 5 major positive experiences you've had in your life, right? Like just stuff that maybe didn't just happen to you, but like was definitely a milestone in some way. And so, for example, it could have been anything from maybe having the courage to leave their last job and start their business in the first place, the courage to decide to start a family. I don't know. It could be anything. It's different for everyone. They were going through the healing from a traumatic injury, deciding they want to walk again. These amazing things came out. And then I said, how many of these involved some risk? And they all did. They all did. They didn't know. There's no guarantee. There's never a payoff. We drive onto the highway every day and like we could get hit by a car, it just, we forget, like, to put this into perspective that you have, no one's going to care more about your success than you. So you have to know it is there. You have to know it is there and trust the process. And when you are guided, listen. When you are tested, be aware of that. There's a difference. It's another show, right? Sometimes you are tested a bit, but sometimes you're being guided in a different direction. Just tune into that conversation. And then you just start knowing. And when you do, it's absolutely magical.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. And I can see your sense of knowing in you, in everything that you're doing. And it's inspiring to see, because I think that it's probably something I want to know more of for myself and trust more in. And I'm sure there's lots of people listening that feel the same way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ali, for sharing everything that you did with our listeners today. I feel like I could have you on the show for half a day.
Yeah. We hit some heavy stuff. I feel like we kind of did the buffet,
Yeah. I mean, like there's so many things that I could ask you about, but anyways, I think the stuff we talked about was really valuable and good. And I just want to say, on behalf of all the women who you have positively impacted and inspired, thank you. I appreciate you walking this journey and I appreciate learning from you.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get my new shows every week. Also, I'd love if you left us a review so more women like you can discover us. We're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, and other major platforms. And I'd love to hear from you personally. Come join the conversation on social. Instagram is my happy place lately, and that's Ali Brown Official, but you can find links to my other platforms at alibrown.com. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you tuned in.